and welcome back to our Halloween Spooktacular, our horror month, and we are talking all things Lovecraft. We are talking about a movie that I had not ever seen before, mostly because it was a Japanese, French, an American co-production, and was only ever available here in America on a VHS. But thankfully, uh, there are several companies in Europe who are doing the Lord's work and are releasing all region Blu-rays. So I was able to pick up a copy of this. We're talking about 1993's H.P. Lovecraft's Necronomicon, Book of the Dead. And this movie, like I said at the end of the last video, checks a lot of boxes for me. Number one, on topic for our month's H.P. Lovecraft topic. Number two, it is an anthology film, and I, as well as Nick, are both huge suckers and lovers of anthology film. And three, the American part of this movie was made by Brian Usna, who brought us the original Reanimator films, produced the original and then directed the two sequels, produced From Beyond, directed Society, which is a movie that we will one day talk about, trust me. For no other reason than I'm going to make somebody watch it with me. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this anthology film covering 3 stories plus a wraparound. Our 3 stories are adaptations of Lovecraft, and they all 3 kind of take on... Honestly, I think it's really the only true way you can adapt most of what Lovecraft writes is to kind of take the story and kind of put it in a modern setting, kind of update it, if you will. I would like to see some noir stuff done, but we'll get into that later on this month when we're talking about, if we haven't already, our live episode over on our Twitch channel. But because Lovecraft can be difficult to adapt, and so I like that we took a shot here with these 3 kind of smaller stories. The stories we are adapting are one called Rats in the Walls, which ironically has no rats in it. They appropriately changed the name to a better title for this movie, and it's called The Drowned. We have Cool Air, which calling something Cool Air in the 90s sounds like it's a BMX movie. Perhaps a rollerblade movie. And then you have Whispers, which is a adaptation of The Whisperer in the Dark. And then, of course, our wraparound story, which sees Jeffrey Combs in makeup as H.P. Lovecraft. Although I gotta tell you, he doesn't much look like like H.P. Lovecraft as much as it does Jeffrey Combs kind of cosplaying Bruce Campbell. But he goes to a like a museum / library, goes down to a secret locked room and finds the Necronomicon and starts reading from it to create these stories. And it turns out his writing has brought forth the cosmic horrors that he will later become famous for writing. So we'll kind of do this segment by segment, starting, of course, with the wraparound, which is titled The Library. And again, it has Jeffrey Combs, so it automatically gets an uptick for me. I love Jeffrey Combs. And he does a pretty good job of playing this character, playing Lovecraft. Although it's like uncanny valley how much he looks like Bruce Campbell. And it's mostly just him reading these stories, and at the end he kind of fights a monster. Sort of. And there's some wild effects. But that's the other thing with this movie. This is a very early 90s gooey Brian Yuzna film. Screaming Mad George and his makeup effects are splattered all over this film in all 3 segments. But as far as the wraparound goes, it works just fine. I like the wraparound. Again, I like the idea of involving Lovecraft in the creation of his all the things he's created, the monsters and legends and worlds beyond. But let's get into these 3 stories. So we'll start off first with the first story called The Drowned, and again, this is the adaptation of the story Rats in the Walls. This one is directed famously by Christoph Gans, who would go on to make an amazingly underappreciated film that I cannot wait to talk about someday on here, Brotherhood of the Wolf, as well as for a while one of the best, if not flat out the best for a long time, in my opinion, video game adaptations in the original Silent Hill. But he directs this film, and the thing about these stories, excuse me, is they are fairly short. We see a young man who inherits this giant home from an ancestor who's recently dealing with the loss of his wife in a tragic car accident. He finds a letter from the ancestor, who is played by Richard Lynch, who lost his wife and son at sea, uses the Necronomicon to bring them back, because what is dead may walk again. And it's really just kind of an overly simplified Pet Cemetery, but with a lot more weird shape-shifting tentacles and gooey ickiness. Again, the effects in this movie are wild. There is some great practical effects. There is one scene that's very weirdly where so he brings his dead wife back, and there's a scene where I'm like, oh man, it's like this is like the scary version of that scene in Ghostbusters where Ray has that dream about the ghost. But then it turns out she's covered in tentacles, and all weird kind of vitriol shoots from her eyes. There's a lot of eye trauma in this movie, all through all three stories, so be wary of that. He essentially uses the house and uses it to take down our monster underneath the house, which they don't specifically call Dagon, but they do mention he does read a passage from Call of Cthulhu in this segment, but it's clearly not Cthulhu. If it was going to be one of the two, it would definitely be more of a Dagon. But I do like the story. I like the actor who's in it. He's a famous British actor. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. He's fantastic. It's a lot of one-man show kind of thing. Mostly it's the flashback and Richard Lynch. Anytime you see Richard Lynch play kind of play an over-the-top character, it's going to be fun. I really did like the story. The second story is called I think in this movie they retitled it The Cold. And this one has David Warner in it, and this one is of the three stories. This one feels the absolute most like a episode of Tales from the Crypt. Even down to like the ending, there's like a twisty ending. You have the actor who plays, I had his name, and I lost it, but he plays the adult version of Eddie in the 90s miniseries of It. He's also in Django Unchained here recently. Not recently, because that movie was like almost 10 years old. But he's in that. That's the first time I'd seen him in a long time since It. And he plays like this snoopy reporter who's tracking all these bodies to this apartment. And while Boston is in the middle of this massive heat wave, this apartment building is ice cold. And it's not for hiding bodies, it's for keeping things alive, which should be long dead. This one you get a lot of great effects. There's a scene toward the end where you get to watch a character melt and tear themselves apart, and in all of its gory details, and it looks fantastic. And again, the ending of this particular segment absolutely feels like an episode of Tales from the Crypt. And so this was the one that was directed. I cannot remember the director's name, and I apologize. But he is the Japanese director. Of course, Christoph Gans is French, and so he was the European director. And so our last segment, as well as the wraparound, are directed by Brian Usna, who again brought us Bride of Reanimator, Beyond Reanimator, Society, Return of the Living Dead 3, things like that. And he does a story called The Whispers, which is a adaptation of The Whisperer in the Dark. This one is probably the best of the three. It's definitely the longest and has probably the most effects. This one involves a young female cop who is pregnant, chasing down a serial killer, and she follows him to this abandoned like warehouse, and it really is just like a slow descent into hell. That puts us in the bottom of the belly of the beast, if you will. There are wild bat-like creatures who feast on bone marrow, as well as humanoid monsters who need the woman in order to continue feeding these creatures. And it's really insanely gory. The less said about this particular segment, the better, because of any of them, this is the one you should definitely seek out. So I don't want to spoil anything for you. All in all, again, having never seen this anthology, I did thoroughly enjoy it. It's a decent anthology. It plays out like most anthologies do, where some stories are stronger than the other. But I thought on the whole, all three stories are enjoyable. The wraparound is great. It's a great way to kind of get a lot of Lovecraft for your buck. It would be nice to see this movie kind of get some attention here in America. I don't think it will, depending on who the distributors are. Again, I was able to find a German region-free Blu-ray on eBay, and the Blu-ray looks fantastic. Just remember to turn on your English language, otherwise you're going to watch the first 30 seconds of this movie in German. But otherwise, it's a great little anthology movie, and a great kind of quick fire adaptation of three shorter Lovecraft stories. And I do appreciate as all the 90s aesthetic of all of this movie, and the effects are really fantastic. If you're a effects guy, a gore hound, you want to see that latex and that KY just get weird and gross. Nobody does it better than Screaming Mad George at the time, for the budget they were on, and you're gonna have a good time with this movie. So if you can, track it down and check it out. But that'll bring us to the end of this review. Next week we will wrap up our look at Lovecraft with another homage. And this last movie is one I'm excited about. Number one, because it's a fantastic movie, so spoilers for that. But it also is, of all the movies we're going to cover, that we have covered, it's the only one that delves into the one thing more terrifying than any of the elder gods themselves. Take that, Cthulhu, or Dagon, or Amaroth, or any of you guys, because this one, we're getting knee deep in some all out eldritch terrors. With 2016's The Void. So come back for that, because I'm really excited to talk about that movie. And we'll see you guys next week. Enjoy some spooky movies this week, and leave them in the comments. Let me know what scary movies you are watching, and then what movies you're having to search high and low outside of the United States for, because physical media is important, and we like stuff here too. Darn it. Again, one of these days I'm going to come up with a classy, solid ending for all these videos. Today's not that day.